Thank you very much, viewers, for staying tuned to HGP Nightly News as we bring you coverage from Georgia on the second autopsy for Adriana Young. I'm standing here with the very renowned Dr. Terry, who conducted that autopsy on Adriana Young. Dr. Terry, first of all, I want to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to first witness the autopsy up close and personal. And I made some notes that I would like you to just clarify for the viewing public in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and those who are joining us from the wider viewership. Could you first tell me, when you opened the body, what were you looking for? What did you observe?
Okay. Well, I guess first of all, let me say thank you for having the confidence in allowing me to conduct this examination. I know this is a very sensitive topic, and as with every case, I do the best I can in doing the examination. And in doing this case, realizing I'm doing a second autopsy, it's understood that this is mainly for quality control type purposes, because the first autopsy has already been conducted, and at that point in time, that is your best opportunity to see the pathology or injuries and disease processes in the original state, because by the time I do a second autopsy, artifacts have been introduced from the first autopsy, and in this case, as well as from the embalming. But in doing this examination, first of all, I'm making sure that the first examination was conducted correctly and thoroughly, and it appeared that it was. There are some minor differences in how techniques of dissection, but I think the first examination was conducted thoroughly. And as I'm doing this examination, first and foremost, I'm looking for any trauma to the body and making sure that there is no trauma that has been overlooked in the first examination. And also in going through the previously dissected organs, looking to see if there's any trauma to them as well as any disease processes at play. And also at this point in time, I'm collecting specimens in case additional testing needs to be done. Again, realizing the optimal specimens are from the first examination, but I'm conducting this examination keeping in mind that I'm not going to have a chance to go back. And so anything I need to do at this point in time. And so I think I over-collected things, but again, I don't get a second chance to go back and be thorough. So those are the things that I was mindful of in the course of doing this examination.
And did you find any evidence of trauma?
No, I did not.
Secondly, the first autopsy ruled that Adriana Young drowned. Would you come to that conclusion?
At this point in time, I would not come to that conclusion. I think that there's a lot of information that needs to be gained, a lot of investigation that needs to be done. Drowning is a diagnosis of exclusion, and by that, it means that you have to exclude other potential causes of death. And oftentimes, when a body is found in water, the assumption is that the person has drowned. There is nothing at autopsy that is diagnostic of drowning. So again, that's what I mean by saying drowning is a diagnosis of exclusion. And in this case, what I have been told regarding the circumstances are so suspicious that I really think that there needs to be a very thorough investigation, and I would want to know the results of, say, toxicologic testing or drug testing from the first examination, as well as any additional testing that was done in accordance with the first autopsy.
So you would be very reluctant to say that this child drowned?
Yes, I would. Based on the circumstances that are reported to me, I would.
And you would recommend a thorough criminal investigation?
Yes, I would.
I also observed that you mentioned that there was some part of the body that was not examined. Could you take me through that?
Well, I don't know if I could say necessarily that it was not examined, but looking at the structures of the neck, the hyoid bone, which is a U-shaped bone that sits at the base of the tongue, as well as the thyroid cartilage, which is part of the voice box or the larynx. They still had a good bit of soft tissue, muscle, and whatnot around them. Now, certainly you could feel them and tell that they were intact, but for a case such as this, I wanted to expose them a little bit more so that there's no question that these structures were not broken.
How problematic, Doctor, how problematic would it be to say that Adriana Young drowned?
Again, I think it is problematic because of drowning being a diagnosis of exclusion, and what I was told regarding the circumstances of her disappearance and death and the subsequent finding of the body in a pool where it reportedly had previously been searched and she was not there. So that I find very disturbing. It's not like she was seen playing in the water and then a little bit later is found under the water. This, as was told to me, she was seen in the water and then disappeared. And the pool was searched, she was not there, and then sometime later is found in the pool. That is disturbing because I don't think you can simply write it off as this child drowned. You've got to be concerned, did she die sometime earlier and then was placed in the pool? Because there's not going to be any good way to discern whether or not that happened. That's going to require an investigation and additional testing to see if there's anything that may be amiss, such as unexpected drugs in her system or any indication of a sexual assault. Things like this need to be considered and need to be looked at, given, again, the circumstances that were reported to me.
Doc, I need to ask, and I must. Did this body lose any forensic value?
I would say yes. The examination that I had the opportunity to do is compromised at this point because, again, it's a second autopsy. So we have issues of artifacts that are introduced by the first autopsy. We've got decomposition that has taken place, and we've got embalming that has occurred. Now, so that introduces a lot of artifact to the body, and it compromises the examination somewhat. But this diagnosis and this investigation doesn't hinge just on the autopsy. It primarily hinges on the investigation of the death or the investigation of any potential crime that occurred in association with this child's disappearance.
What next for you? What next from here, from the autopsy table? What next?
Well, what next for me is I will generate my report. I will look at slides from the tissue, under the microscope. These I don't think are going to be, helpful in propagating or furthering the investigation. For me, I would be more concerned about the results of the first examination and any testing that occurred in accordance with that first examination. Because, as I said, based on my essentially doing quality control checking in this second autopsy, I think the first examination, at least technically from what I could see in association with doing the second autopsy, was done very competently and thoroughly, and I would want to see what the results are.
Finally, Doc, before I let you go, I've heard of your unblemished character long before I got here. I did some background checks as well, and I see that you have challenged a lot of state cases. Secondly, that means that you might have dealt with a lot of criminal cases. How would you point our policemen, our detectives, in what direction you think we should look to get a more conclusive findings on this case?
Well, that's an interesting question, especially since we're dealing with a country that I really don't have any familiarity with. But certainly, and I don't know exactly what resources are available, but any ability to look at surveillance video around the time of her disappearance, and see what can be gleaned from that. Also, if there are any video around the pool at the time, around the time she was then discovered, to see if she was placed in the pool, or what transpired between her disappearing and searches of that area where she's not located and then her being discovered. So I think a lot of maybe just legwork going on and seeing if anybody saw anything, if there was anything recorded, captured on video, because these days it seems as though nothing is private. Big Brother is watching us all the time, it seems. So I would say that's something that would be of concern to me. And also, as I mentioned from the first examination, a thorough toxicological evaluation to see if there's anything that's unexpected in her bloodstream. And also, if sexual contact type specimens were collected, to ensure that they are tested and see if there was any indication that she may have been sexually assaulted. Although I did not see anything physically demonstrable with the body that would lead one to believe that that would be a concern regarding why you would have an 11-year-old kind of disappear, potentially be abducted, and then wind up dead.
Lastly, before you go, if somebody drowns in a pool, 24 hours, when you open that body, would you immediately know that?
No, you would not. As I said, drowning is a diagnosis of exclusion. There's certain things that we can see that would be supportive of drowning, but are not uniform. People will talk about fluid in the lungs. You may or may not have that. People will talk about fluid in the sphenoid sinus, which is a sinus that's at the base of the skull. Again, you may or may not have that with drowning. Typically, you do have that with bodies that are in water, but that happens whether they're alive at the time they drown or if they're in the water and they're already deceased. So that really doesn't tell you anything other than that the body was in water. So there, again, drowning is a diagnosis of exclusion. There's nothing that is pathognomonic or indicative of drowning.
In determining several factors, you mentioned while I was at the autopsy table, this word trauma. It might not have been like physical. Could you tell me more about that?
Oh, trauma. Yes, I was saying that just because I don't see any physical manifestation of trauma doesn't mean that someone cannot or was not murdered. There are ways in which you can kill someone and not leave any demonstrable trauma on the body. Basically, you just have to interfere with their ability to breathe. And in some cases, it may involve somehow constricting their chest or maybe putting pressure on their neck. And you don't always wind up breaking structures in the neck or bruising structures in the neck. So sometimes you can have asphyxial type deaths or deaths where adequate blood flow and oxygen doesn't get to the brain and not leave any trauma to the body.
Thank you, Doc. In conclusion, you would say that Adriana Young's death is highly suspicious.
Yes, I would.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. This is Dr. Terry, the doctor who performed the autopsy on Adriana Young. Stay tuned to HGP Nightly News. We will continue to bring you updates from Georgia. Thank you.